Welcome everyone to another episode of the Creative Communities First podcast. The Creative Communities First project is an Erasmus Plus project for digital education readiness, which is funded by the European Commission. My name is Federica Casaccio and I'm working on Creative Communities First on behalf of SCEEU, which stands for Accreditation Council for Entrepreneurial and Engaged Universities. SCEEU is a German-based but locally operating quality assurance body with a focus on acknowledging engagement and entrepreneurship in higher education. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Irene Culcasi, an expert in service and e-service learning, who will help us to understand more about this subject and will discuss with us the topics of quality assurance and sustainability within in-service learning. Welcome, Irene.
Thank you, Federica.
How are you?
Fine. You?
I'm good, thank you. I'm really happy to have this conversation with you today. And I would like to start by asking you if you can please introduce yourself and share a little bit about your work in e-service learning.
Okay, thank you. My name is Irene Culcasi. I'm a research fellow at LUMSA University in Rome. I recently did my PhD in education in e-service learning and the impact on soft skills development in university students between Italy and Chile. I am a founder member of the European Association of Service Learning in Higher Education, and my work is on service learning and e-service learning.
Wow, this is really interesting. You are really an expert, and I think we are so honored to have you here with us. So can you please maybe define a little bit for us e-service learning and by which key elements it is characterized?
Yeah, when I think about e-service learning, I refer to Wallner et al. Definition. They say that e-service learning is a service learning course mediated by information and communication technologies, wherein the instructional component, the service component, or both are conducted online, often in a hybrid model.
Okay, so in this case, we are speaking about more specifically service learning that is brought online and that is implemented through digital tools according to this definition. But so can you give us a little bit of an explanation about what exactly is service learning? What is it used for? Where do we find it in education, in the education system?
Yeah, I think that e-service learning during the pandemic was the only way to continue to implement service learning. So a lot of European university had to deal with a lot of challenges and continue to try to have an impact, a social impact with their students by conducting activities online. And e-service learning was a very useful instrument, not only to try to, I don't know to say, to transform the classical classes in a more interactive way, but also to have an impact in their reality. I think that e-service learning could be also a useful instrument to have a global impact. A lot of students of European countries and international countries, they find together maybe facing the same challenge, developing a lot of interesting projects.
Okay, so I understand that basically in-service education, in-service learning is a tool that has a great potential in terms of having an impact on the society and supporting the also students to be able to basically support their communities using also digital tools and basically also to support institutions to do that. But so I would like to ask you, based on your experience and knowledge, what are the main challenges faced when implementing e-service learning that are either in programs or courses?
Yeah, I think that we have to distinguish between e-service learning bottom up and e-service learning top down. When a university relies e-service learning bottom up, means that the students have to choose everything. So the problem, the institution of their territory they want to work with, and implement the project. Instead, when we talk about e-service learning top down, it means that the university choose a project. So the university create a collaboration between an NGO or other type of entity in the territory, and then open a call to their students in order to participate in these projects. So the challenges can be very different depending on the model that you choose. But I think that we can think also about general challenges. Technology is also in a NOBA classes. During the pandemic, we saw that during the classes, a lot of students have the camera off. So when you try to implement a service learning project or e-service learning project, you need the participation of the students. And the first thing is try to create a climate of collaboration, of community among the students. So you have to work in this kind of relationship between the students, among the students. And then you have to find an NGO or another type of entity in your territory that could support your students, so could have a level of digital skills enough enough high. Or maybe the university can offer a workshop or free lessons in terms of digital tools. These are the instrumental challenges regarding e-service learning. Then we have a lot of challenges that maybe are general, and we face this type of challenge in service learning and e-service learning at the same level, like the motivation of our students, the feedback. I know that during e-service learning and service learning, it's very important to create moments of reflection with them, with the student, with the community. And maybe during e-service learning could be more difficult because you can't have the same relationship with your students. And so maybe some of the authors in this field suggest to organize more spaces of feedback in order to help students to face their problem during the projects. I don't know. I think about confusing challenges, but I think this are some of these challenges.
No, well, I think you were really clear, and actually a point that really stood with me was the participation and creating this collaboration atmosphere with students that, as you said, can be really challenging when it is performed online. So I was thinking if perhaps certain platforms can facilitate that better than others, or that based on your experience as well, if you have seen that there is a difference between the level of participation of students when they are collaborating in this type of projects physically, or when they are doing that in the digital space.
Yeah, I think that the key is to try to implement different type of platform. So you can use, of course, the synchronous platform like Zoom or like Teams, I don't know, and also try to implement with your students different types of platforms to communicate. chats or groups on Google Drive, so they can explore and different tools. I know that when we, for example, in LUMSA, we did a lot of projects of e-service learning, and we saw a difference. You are right, Federica. When the students have the possibility to do a project in person, they feel more this sense of community. When the project is only online, maybe it's more difficult for them to understand also the impact. For example, a lot of projects that our students developed during the pandemic and after the pandemic were online projects. So projects related to the online community. They choose, for example, problem like cyberbullying or the loneliness. So they create Instagram page or website, trying to create digital communities in order to help people to, for example, to face with cyberbullying. And in this case, for these students, although the project was very high quality, they didn't understand what kind of impact they were generated, because the only indicators that they had were the interaction in Instagram, for example. And this is a completely different when you are in a community face-to-face, living with people. So maybe this is a very good challenge, a very important challenge. And in LUMSA, we try to reflect more with students. So when we are in a planning phase, we ask students to reflect on what indicator I have to observe in order to understand if my project can have an impact. And so try to stimulate them to reflect before the project on what I have to observe or see when I do this project.
I think this is a really interesting point, also because, as you said, like you noticed that basically some students couldn't fully understand the impact that the project was having while they were working online. So I wonder if this is also something that is an indicator that may be used to evaluate the rate of success or not of a project. So I think based on that, I would like to ask you if you can tell us if there are some tools to actually ensure the quality of e-service learning. So I'm thinking, for instance, about methodology, the framework. How do you usually perform quality, the measurement of quality in e-service learning?
For example, my university, LUMSA, is participating in a European project called e-service learning for EU. So e-service learning for more digital and inclusive Europe higher education system. This is the extended name. And we are working on the quality elements and the same principle in order to ensure a successful e-service learning project. So the design principle are like a guidelines to inform the project design. So they are articulated in a set of statements that put a clear focus on a specific mindset or the requirements which should guide the design activity. And this are for the teacher, the faculty. And they are also useful to fasten and make easier the decision in the various project phases. And of course, as service learning is a form of service learning, some design principles are the same of the traditional service learning, and others are specially related to the online dimension. And so, for example, if you we develop a list of design principles For example, the first cluster is instructional design, where we can find combination of pedagogy, so design, learning and service in order to combine well-established and innovative pedagogy. Then we have the learner centrality and engagement, so faculty and the other community representative play the role of learning activators. Therefore, design learning to foster independence and agency through pedagogical innovation. Also, we have, for example, the horizontal integration, the vertical integration. So horizontal integration, for example, is when learning and service are connected with the community. So connect students from various fields of study or specialization. And so embedded horizontal transfer of knowledge and skills into the learning design. And vertical integration is when undergraduate or graduate students could engage in a multidisciplinary teams. So design principles are this type of guidelines for a teacher in order to ensure the basis of a project. And then we have also the quality elements that are a set of criteria used to describe the successful or not successful of a project. So they are like an element that I can also use in order to assess my projects according to the relevant dimension of this pedagogical approach to service learning. For example, some e-service learning quality element. In this case, also we have different type of cluster. So a cluster related to relevant learning, relevant service, reciprocity, student engagement, reflection. So we consider the important dimension of service learning, and then we specify different items that faculty or students can use in order to assess their project. For example, if we think about technology, we can, for example, I can read some example of the quality element. The first one related to technology is the e-service learning project is based on an humanistic, supportive, and inclusive use of technology. The second one, the e-service learning project integrate online and face-to-face components into an articulated and current process. Or the e-service learning integrates suitable technology with respect to the nature and objective of the projects. Different projects require different needs. E-service learning is not one size fits all. So this is some example, but it's like a checklist, no? At the end of your project or during your project can help you to orient yourself in order to create a more successful project.
Thank you, Irene, because I think that this is really useful, definitely, like having this checklist, as you called it, because indeed it can really guide somehow the people who are implementing the project as well. May they be like teachers, or may they be, as you said, also representatives or other organizations within the community, to be able to understand what is happening, if it's happening in the right way, and how to adjust that. And based on this, then I would like to ask you, so because I think one of the latest, or maybe the last criteria for evaluation that you mentioned is quite connected to basically the adaptability then of the project. As mentioned, e-service learning is just not a one let's say program that can fit in a box. It has to be adapted to the reality and to the context of the communities and the places where it's taking place. So based on this, I would like to ask you then, how can we ensure that a program that has been that is being developed based on e-service learning criteria, and that has been then evaluated through this quality criteria and principles, then how can it be reproductive and reproduced, in the future? So when we speak about this, when we mention about the sustainability of this type of projects after the end of the project itself, I would like to ask you, so in terms of duration, if usually these e-service learning programs and courses can be, are they sustainable in the long term or in the short term? Can they be reproduced in different contexts once again? Can they be made flexible to be and adaptable to the different challenges as well that they're facing? So can you explain to us a little bit about this relation between sustainability and e-service learning?
Thank you, Federica, for this very interesting question. I think it's the more complex because when we think about service learning or e-service learning, we know that service learning is not, for example, in Italy, we don't call service learning like a methodology, but we call it a pedagogical approach. And this is a very important distinction because when you have a methodology, you have to follow like a very strict rules. For example, flipped classroom or cooperative learning. So we know that this type of methodology has like a very, very, very strict rules in order to apply this type of activity. But service learning is more than a methodology. It's a pedagogical approach. So it's a way to understand education, the learning path, and in order to try to rethink each discipline in order to have an impact in the society. And when you try to implement a service learning or e-service learning project, you realize that you can use a lot of methodology in e-service learning. For example, if in Italy we have this itinerario, we call it, is path. So we have 5 steps in order to implement a service learning project. So we start with motivation, then we have the diagnosis, then is the planning phase, then we have the implementation phase, and at the end we have the closure phase. When you do, for example, the motivation phase, the first phase, or the diagnosis, you can use a lot of methodology. So, for example, the students could do interviews or could do cooperative learning in order to divide the problem in different aspects, and each teams could deep in one of these aspects. So, I think that when service learning have this type of sustainability, we don't have to looking for this sustainability, because service learning and e-service learning are in itself sustainable in terms of duration. I don't think, maybe we don't have to talk about reproducibility, because I think that a very interesting things of e-service learning and service learning is that in each place, so you can implement service learning everywhere, and in each context, service learning is different. But also, service learning could give you an opportunity to realize projects realize projects, connect with other part of the world, because maybe a university in South America and a university in Europe could find that they can work together in a same project. So, and then build projects that are not so related to the context. Like maybe we can talk about local, so local, but also global projects. I don't know if I answer your question, but maybe this is a very interesting thing of service learning.
Yes, no, you absolutely did. And actually, I think that one point that you mentioned, which is really, really important, is that, as you said, e-service learning at the end of the day is a pedagogical approach. And because of that, is also sustainable in itself. So I think that this kind of explain a little bit how can we really look at e-service learning as an approach that is that can be used in different contexts, an approach that can be implemented in different ways. And as you mentioned, there are several methodologies that we can use to do that, but at the same time we need to keep in mind that at the end of the day it is a pedagogical approach. And I think that this is kind of the key, perhaps, to be able to also expand the knowledge about this subject, and also to raise awareness about the importance of introducing and to implementing e-service learning. And since we are going towards the end of our conversation, I would like to ask you one last question. So which advices perhaps you would like to give to higher education institutions that are thinking about implementing e-service learning programs or courses? I think that somehow you were able to sell it as well, really, really well, especially because of this. But what exactly would you recommend to these institutions who are thinking to use this approach?
Well, maybe they, if an institution want to start in service learning or e-service learning, I think that the important things is to try to appreciate the work of the people that are involved in this type of project, because we know that service learning and e-service learning require a lot of work for students, for faculty. So recognize this type of work could be a very, very important thing in order to also give to these projects the sustainability in the times. So we know, for example, in service learning, a lot of people participate in a free way, voluntary way. So it's a very, very good opportunity. For example, organizing one day to celebrate the project is a very good opportunity to create community, to recognize that each entity, the school, the university, the community, the municipality could have a very important part in education, in the education of the young of the students. And this, I think, these are like a present for a community in order to discover that we are together, we can do something that impact reality, and we are grateful for that. And the university could be the strategical point of interaction among all these type of actors.
Absolutely. Wow. Thank you, Irene, because you really gave a great example here. And I think that it's really important to stress the idea that, of course, this type of projects and being able to bring together such a variety of stakeholders within the community can really strengthen the collaboration between different entities, can really strengthen also the engagement in the community itself. So, and to operate at different levels. So we're speaking about institutional levels when we refer to higher education institutions or educational institutions in general, but also at the individual level when we are able to involve students as well in participating in these projects and making sure that they are able to make an impact in the community. So I think that was also a really good answer. I really hope that higher education institutions in the future will be able to realize that perhaps e-service learning is one very good approach to use and to implement. Unfortunately, we have to end our conversation here, but I would like to thank you so much for joining us, for joining the Creative Communities First podcast series. It was a pleasure to talk with you, and I really hope that you will be able to continue with your work, and to also and especially raise awareness about the importance of e-service learning and how impactful it can be on our communities.
Thank you very much, Federica, and thank you very much to also create with your project, this project, opportunity to this type of conversation and encounter. So thank you very much. It was so nice.
Thank you, Irene. And we'll keep in touch, hopefully.
Yes, of course.
Okay. Goodbye.
Goodbye.